I'm Hannah.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And this is Filling
the Inksville podcast.
And this is season 4.
Season 4. We have a note from our editor to not keep acknowledging that the numbers keep going up.
The numbers keep going up!
How did we get so far? Alex was actually like, you say it every episode. How did we get here? It's very exciting.
A big deal because every time we manage to actually sit down and want to do one of these podcast episodes, it's like a little mini achievement that life has quietened for an hour and we can actually talk about something we love. So yeah, I think I will celebrate that. And my voice will get higher pitched every single time.
Absolutely. It is exciting. There's definitely, and like, again, we've probably said it before, but there are definitely times that we didn't think we'd get this far.
Oh God, yeah. But I think as well, this is the final season, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's been a bit of a journey. You know, we've talked to so many amazing people, and it's really apt that this is a reflective season because I'm feeling very reflective.
Yeah.
And I'm just what a lovely little bit of time we've had
spent together.
Yeah, that's
really nice. No, it has been good, and like we've just been very lucky and very appreciative of people who've spent time with us, and then people coming ahead.
And as well, in the interlude we obviously did the Inksville Festival, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And that episode, it was just so lovely. We did it live in the room with everybody, and it was just really nice to kind of realise that actually people listen to this.
Yeah. People listen to us.
And
not on the age. And that episode will be live by the time this is out. So
have a listen if you haven't already.
But yeah, so last week we touched on like what reflecting means to us when we're looking at our projects. We sort of talked more about like expanding more like what this year's been like and sort of reflected on that and how it's changed things. So and we sort of talked about how Critic Task last week was going to be basically reflecting on our creative projects that we so naively set back in January and making adjusting our plan to see how we can progress with the project.
Yeah, the kind of retrospect, with hindsight in mind.
Yeah, being so much older and wiser and
I really feel like we are though. Like, I don't know why I feel as though this year we've been through some real heavy kind of adult-y stuff. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we are coming out this wiser.
I do. No, I think we come out as wise as people and also as writers. I think we've learned so much this last year that like I think sorry. I think it makes sense that we're much more like well adjusted and like realistic about what we're doing with both life and Inksville and writing.
It's made me feel a lot better talking to other people as well. Thinking about the process they have been on to produce their work and kind of actually the longevity of their careers, in that things weren't just instantly happening overnight. It's actually taken a while to build, and it's in actual fact that's made me feel a lot better and a lot more reassured, because I think 2 years ago Inksville didn't exist and I just wrote poetry in my bedroom and didn't share it with anyone, and now I'm here doing Inksville, a podcast, a festival. Like that's insane to me.
A zine,
exactly. So in actual fact, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's a classic saying, isn't it? And
but you never say it to yourself. I'd say it to you, I'd be like, Hannah, no, don't worry, it's fine. And I'm like, I'm a piece of shit. I never sorts things.
Exactly. We're so mean to ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. So do you want me to go first on how I reflect on my project?
Go for it.
I honestly, it was really sad. I will preemptively warn people. I don't think I've cried on this podcast, which is a big achievement for me.
Okay.
Well done.
Is that up to change?
No, I'm not.
I've got really big sleeves today. You can have some.
I'm just there, like drying my eyes. I mean, I'm definitely going to cry in the last episode. Just to give you a heads up, it's going to be sad. It's been a big thing for us.
And I have a baby with me who will join you on that.
me and the William crying together. Yes. I felt really sad because I think I definitely there was such like. I wrote myself like this like little almost like diary entry of what I wanted this collection to be and how I wanted to do. And like even rereading that and like going up the roots of the collection being like, oh, that's where I started was really interesting. But yeah, like the person who wrote that didn't know about the redundancy, didn't know about the house, didn't know about health stuff and family stuff. And it was just a bit like it just like really got me in the feels that I really like. I mean, I think I'm really bad for like January being my month of like, I'm gonna be amazing this year. I'm like do this and these are my New Year's resolutions and this and that, and really coming down hard in February. So yeah, I reflected and I reread and I've kind of shelved the project. I just feel like it's not what I want to be writing right now. And that's okay.
I think that's really brave to admit as well. Kind of, you've started something and it's just not, you're not feeling it right now.
No, I'm not. I didn't read it and go, oh, I'm ready to get back into this.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I'm not feeling that,
itchy fingers to get right in.
Yeah, or like, oh, I can edit this poem straight away because I know exactly where I've gone wrong. Yeah. I didn't have that feeling, and I was just like, oh, if I'm not feeling it, there's no point.
Yeah, and if you feel like you're battling against it, then it has that opposite effect, because in actual fact, it's funny. Someone once told me that to be a good writer, sometimes you've just got to write in a way that's like turning on an old tap. The rubbish and almost like, what is it? Grunge. Gunk. Yeah, that's got to come through first before the clear water can run.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, no, sometimes I'm like, I'm sick of this gunge now, and I just want a break from the gunge.
Yeah.
And that clarity's not coming.
You feel very apt with your kitchen situation.
Yeah, I'm very apt. But I know exactly what you mean. I think that's a really good thing to do, because, like you said quite a few times throughout this, it will always be fermenting in the back of your mind.
Yes.
And you never know when that inspiration might strike again.
I love my little images, metaphors, but I always think that writing is kind of like each project is like a sourdough starter.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is a new one.
This is a new one. Definitely because I was watching like how to like make a sourdough starter on my lunch break today. But I think that really is applicable, that like just because you leave something, or like something that ferments, like pickle or kombucha or whatever your go-to fermentation situation is, but you leave it alone and it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that applies to writing. I think it always needs to be like bubbling away and like thinking away. Which is exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've shelved it. I looked at it and I was like, I'm not feeling this. I don't think I'm doing anything exciting or innovative with it. And let's just pop this to one side.
Yeah. And come back to it when it feels right.
Yeah. But I'm not writing. I'm not writing.
Yeah.
I am still writing, but I'm not writing that.
Yeah. Fair play.
So how about yourself?
Well, yeah.
Because you've got nothing major coming up. You're completely emotionally fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly the same. Life does get in the way, doesn't it? And I think I've spent the past 2 months doing a house renovation. So my laptop I've not even been able to access it. It's been packed in a box for the past 2 months. But I have been doing lots of writing in my mind and in my head. And because of the nature of my novel, it's very much inspired by the people around me. I'm just always writing. I never stop writing in my head, in my brain, and I revisit these kind of conversations that I've overheard, or these abnormal things that people are doing that I find really interesting. I'm like, I'm going to write about that. And yeah, I do, and so I never stop writing. I'm always actively writing, even if I'm not putting pen to paper or typing it and getting it onto a computer. So it is strange, because I haven't actually written anything in ages, but I kind of have at the same time, because I've got it in my head and I just need to get it down. So for me, the creative project that I'm working on, it will continue, but it's just not going to be done overnight, and that's fine. And I really did think this would be the year that I did really make some significant progress on it, and I have, to be fair. Yeah. I have kind of added quite a bit to it, but not as much as I wanted to. It's definitely not finished. No. But it is what it is. It's there. I just need to get it down on paper. And I will.
And you very positively keep saying, if this baby's quiet, you think you're going to get some writing done.
I mean, mat leave, if anybody knows me, I am the most ridiculous person for just cramming my diary. Like, I've literally been at work since 7, and then I've got straight in the car and come straight to record a podcast episode. Then I'm going to get straight in the car and I'm going to go to Inksville and run Inksville. And then it's somewhere
I checked this with her. I want to just clarify that I did make sure you're like, I appreciate you made it work.
But I'm not really ragged. Always been like, I just go from one thing to another. Whereas mat leave, I'm not going to be working. I'm probably not going to be arranging things. So I'm like,
you're off Inksville.
Yeah.
For, I think we said 6 months to give you a good breather. But as I said, you're always welcome back. You just don't need to do anything.
But that's the thing. So I'm just like, maybe 2025 is my year. I'll have a child on my boob, but then I'll have at least one free hand to do something.
Yep, absolutely. But I mean, I love the positivity, and I hope it does. And obviously, we're here to support you in whatever way we can.
Thanks.
And it's also been a really cool year, because this is the year that we've shared writing with each other on reflection. Because we've been friends, as we said, for about 2 and a bit years now, and we would share stuff at Inksville. I was going to say we share stuff in the office. That's literally what my brain also feels. I was like, that's how I see Inksville. We share stuff at Inksville. I was going to do it again. But we never actually handed work over before and been like, I've not yet performed this, or you've not yet submitted this, can you take a look at it for me?
Yeah.
And that's something that, upon reflection, I was like, I really hope we continue to do with each other's capacity, because I think it's really nice that I think we have quite similar storytelling, but we have very different ways of sharing and translating that. So yeah, I'm really hoping that kind of continues.
Yeah. I'm sure it will.
Yeah. Definitely. But it's nice to be realistic and sort of like we touched on it last week, but like actually like go ahead in a season and be like, these creative projects didn't happen as we thought, and like we're gonna have to reflect on it. We'll figure out other ways to reflect on stuff, I'm sure. But like it's kind of nice to acknowledge that and be like, we'll put that folder away for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Put that jar of kombucha away.
Sourdough starter on the top fridge shelf or wherever it's kept.
Absolutely.
Well, today's we're welcoming our first guest, aren't we, of the season? It was just us two last week. And we've got the wonderful Matt Abbott joining us.
He's a name that we had on our list, and then you picked him for this season. You were like, you'd had him into your school and you said
well, he was so inspiring to the students that I teach, and he had such a interesting backstory, this really lengthy career, and he is now a poet. He's just made his career and his life all about poetry, and I'm just so interested to pick his brains and kind of reflect on that journey with him. Like, how did he come to be a full-time poet? Yeah,
it's amazing, and also it's really nice for you to have that, like, someone so good coming to schools. I think I'm sure we'll touch on it with Matt, but like it's so nice hearing poetry coming alive to students.
Yeah. And it definitely did. I remember finding it really inspiring because of how inspired my kids were. And he got them excited about poetry, and he only came and did one talk with them. And I just remember thinking to myself, we need to get this guy on the podcast and pick his brains, because he's doing something right and I want to be doing that too.
Yep.
So yeah.
No, it's amazing.
Should be good.
Do you want to read his bio so we can give a little history of what he's like?
Matt has very kindly sent this through to us. He's a poet, educator and activist from Wakefield. I'm from Wakefield. I didn't know he was from Wakefield. I don't know, I was getting like real Leeds vibes from him. So Matt, I'm also from Wakefield, and maybe we'll bond about that. He originally earned critical acclaim and international fandom as skint and demoralised frontman/lyricist in the late noughties. Matt's debut solo stage show, Two Little Ducks, earned a string of 5-star reviews at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2017 and on a 2018 UK theatre tour. The show's poems were published by Verve in 2018. Matt's debut kids' poetry collection, A Hurricane in My Head, was published by Bloomsbury in 2019. He's been commissioned by global brands ranging from Mercedes-Benz to Kellogg's, and has recently had some of his poems translated into Arabic. His social handle is at Matt Abbott Poet on all platforms.
That's amazing.
Just, a few little things there.
I know. It's
published by Bloomsbury.
Tasty.
I'm sure I've seen on your bookshelf, haven't you got Two Little Ducks somewhere?
Yes, I got it from him in an event in Leeds, actually. I got him to sign it. I love doing that. When I buy people's collections from them, I get them to sign it, so I have quite a few little signed editions, which is nice before I completely ruin them with my highlighting.
Yes.
Which I know how much you love. But yeah, should we go have a chat with him?
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait for this. It should be good.
Yeah.
Let's go. Hiya, so we are joined by Matt Abbott today. We're really excited to get to know you a little bit more, Matt. But first of all, could you just introduce yourself, your work in your own words?
Sure. So my name is Matt. I am a poet. I have been writing for nearly 20 years, and I've been full-time for nearly 10 years. So I'm kind of relatively well known on the spoken word scene, as people might call it. But I've also written a novel, and I used to be a musician. So, I use the word musician lightly. I was a lyricist and a frontman in a band. So I've kind of written across various different mediums, really, but poetry's always been the constant. So jack of all trades, master of none. Really, sorry, it's a cliche. Already I've used a cliche. Yeah.
But
my name's Matt and I'm a poet.
The whole saying's good though, isn't it? Is it like more often than not better than a master of wood or something? Or it's like the full...
Oh, well, that's all right then.
There's a full saying. And yeah, I was talking to, so we had my partner's brother on, Earle, back in our second season.
Oh, yeah.
And when I mentioned, because I saw him recently, he was like, oh, who you got on the last season? And I was like, oh, we've got Matt Abbott. And he was like, yeah, and he knew you. So I was like, there you go, your reputation precedes you.
Well, yeah, so I, in 2015, I formed a record label called Nymphs and Thugs, which is now kind of evolved into an organisation called Livewire. But I think that's got as much to do with me being known on the scene as anything else, just for putting on events and releasing albums. So I know Adrian because he filmed some gigs for us on our tour in 2019, 2020. So yeah, it's just a great way to kind of be part of the scene. I love putting on events and releasing things. It's great.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? How kind of when you get into this network, everyone just seems to magically know each other, even though you kind of spread it. Like, what are the chances of you knowing him when he's based on in Birmingham? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Small little scene. Tiny little.
But your events are amazing as well. You've had some really, really big names. You've brought some some real talent to like the lead scene, and also shown off a lot of the lead scene as well, which has been fab.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's just something I'm really passionate about, and I am naturally inclined to want to put on events and do spreadsheets and put things on, and I just think if I've got that energy and that skill, it would be a shame to not use it to put something back into the scene. Like you yourselves know, like I feel like if you've got the opportunity to put back what you get out, then you should. Not everyone's in that position, totally fair, but I'm just really passionate about it. And so, like, over the last 10 years, as I say, I'm probably known just as much for putting on events as anything else, really. I love getting people into poetry who might not have been to a poetry event before. I love platforming poets that I'm passionate about and introducing poets to each other. And it's just a great thing to do. From a selfish perspective, I get to see loads of amazing live poetry as well. So obviously that helps. But yeah, it's just something I'm really passionate about. And now that we've got Livewire, we've started to do workshops as well, and trying to introduce more online stuff. So it's just existing as part of the poetry scene. It's my life. It's my livelihood. So any way that I can be involved, I will.
Amazing. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, because I mean, I we were just kind of chatting beforehand. I know you through our school booking you. I don't think you probably won't know who I am because I was just on the side, like, oh, he seems really great. But yeah, I remember you came and you did a talk for our students who were taking part in Poetry by Heart. And I just remember the kids being absolutely fascinated by you. And then afterwards, one of my students came up to me with Hurricane in my head, like the collection that you published, and she was like, Miss, I found this poetry book and it's absolutely amazing. So I thought you could put it on the bookshelf and share it with people. And I thought I need to speak to this guy because how on earth is he kind of connecting with these young people so strongly? And I just thought, yeah, it'd be really interesting to kind of sit down and pick your brain a little bit and just see what's going on there. Like, what spell are you casting? Because I think when I'm trying to teach poetry, it's like pulling teeth a little bit with young people sometimes, but you seem to have really hit on something.
Well, that's lovely to hear, because sometimes you do these assemblies and you don't know if people are engaging or not. So that's nice to know. But look, the thing is, right, you have to stick to a syllabus, you have to analyse it, there's outcomes, and you know, it's really difficult for you, the way that you have to present poetry. You present poetry as something to be taught and analysed. Yeah. And obviously that's not your fault, right? That's just the card, that's just what you have to do. I can go in and try and get them to just use their imagination and enjoy poetry and have fun with it. And I just feel like you're not allowed to do that, and it must be so frustrating for you. I've got the easy job, really. I think to an extent, when you're passionate about it, that passion can be infectious. Yeah. And I feel like if you maybe perform poetry that they can relate to, that gets them on board as well. But like, I've been doing schools work for 11 years now. And that's also something I'm really passionate about. So I just love, because the thing is, I hated poetry at school. I had no interest in poetry at school. I wasn't really that good at English, to be honest. And so I understand why kids don't like it. And I think if you've got one foot in each camp, it really helps. And there's nothing better than a young person. To be honest, my main outcome is I want them to feel like they've got a voice and like an outlet for their thoughts. We all need to express ourselves. And I don't think anybody would think at the age of 13 would be like, oh, maybe I'll write a poem. Yeah. And if I can get somebody to see that as an outlet, then that's, for me, the most important thing I can do. And I love those Trinity talks at that school. I do enjoy it. It's like an annual booking now. I do like it. Poetry by heart is cool as well. It's just another way for people to access poetry and for it to be a living, breathing thing rather than something in a book.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that I got a good response. Schools work is great. I love schools work. I love it.
Yeah, that leads us really nicely on to our next question, which is something that this is a question you put forward, which is you do a lot of outreach work with local communities, schools, and working with places of interest. How do these projects influence the work you create and share?
Interesting. I think it's this is my opinion, right? I feel like a lot of poets write poetry for other poets, and that's kind of one of poetry's biggest problems. It's just poets speaking to each other and like praising each other or whatever. And like this is poets who write for poets, and then there's the general public. And it's not like I always want to write poetry, but I mean accessible is a dirty word in poetry now, you know. But I always want to write poetry that potentially connects with somebody who has no prior interest in it or hasn't studied it, or you know, I want my poetry to be something that is accessible to people who aren't really normally into poetry. And working with community groups or with something that I'm doing through political activism or even working in schools, like they're the people that I engage with and they're the people that inspire me and I hope to inspire them. And I think that kind of constantly helps me to understand what makes them click. It's not that it's just that I'd much rather engage with and connect with people at a music festival or in a school or whatever than I would in a lecture hall, if that makes sense. Like, and that kind of sounds like unnecessarily anti-elitist, but it's just that I think that poetry can do so much more, and that's what I'm really passionate about doing. And so naturally my writing, I hope, would be more likely to connect with those audiences because that's who I work with, you know?
No, it's amazing.
I don't know if that was a weird answer or not, but like, my passion is getting people into poetry and engaging with people who might not normally engage with. So that's kind of who I naturally write for, basically.
Yes, you write poetry for the people rather than the poets. And I think there is definitely that self-consciousness, isn't there, that another poet might read this work and judge it through their kind of poetic lens, when in actual fact, it shouldn't be about that, should it? It should just kind of like, it's about connection.
But that ship sailed a long time ago. I've stopped. As soon as you start writing poetry for young people, like, because I've got a kids collection, like say, Hurricane in my head, that's something that'll cross you off. If you write poems that rhyme, that might cross you off. If you do a nationwide advert, that'll cross you off. So I've crossed all the things you can cross off. I've crossed them off.
Yeah,
it's all right. I don't need to worry anymore.
Yeah, you're done. All right. You've washed your hands of it. I love that.
Now you're free.
Yeah, it's really cool because I met you at an event over in Leeds and bought your collection, Three Little Ducks.
Oh yeah.
Which was really, really beautiful, and you did perform some of the poems that night. But obviously, it's a full show, isn't it? Three Little Ducks, or it was. Yeah. And it's really funny. I think I said to my partner, this is the first collection I've read that I can hear it being spoken, which is really exciting for me. Because I go to a lot of local poetry nights and I love to buy people's collections and it's great. And I'm a very engaged listener, but I definitely felt with you the rhythm and the pulse definitely carried through. But it was also really interesting the way you put these experiences of it was a refugee camp in Calais. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's very kind, thank you. I got into poetry through listening to. Well, first of all, I got into lyrics. Right, I was obsessed with lyrics as a teenager. Never would have thought to listen to poetry. And when I did start getting into poetry, it was through listening to it. So listening to CDs, listening to it on YouTube, listening to it at gigs. It was a long time before I actually started reading poetry. Now, obviously, it is very important to read poetry. I get that, but for me, it was always something that I wanted to see live or listen to. And like that show, that was principally written to be a stage show, right? So I took it up to Edinburgh Fringe, did a full run at Edinburgh Fringe, and then took it on tour. So they were written to be heard predominantly rather than being written as a collection. But the opportunity to put it in a book, I was, very excited by, of course. And now probably my writing now, it would be much more pagey. Like none of my poems really rhyme anymore, and I guess it is slightly more pagey. But even now, I still would consider how it sounds. Like I just think that's important to consider. I consider poetry to be a spoken art form that is written you know what I mean? Like, rather than I'm going to write, oh, how am I going to perform this? Like, for me, it's got to sound good first.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because I was a lyricist for years as well. I suppose I just naturally think like that. But that's nice to know. It's nice to know.
Yeah, because I entered into poetry from a musician's background as well, and I think I'm exactly the same. You always kind of think about the way it sounds rhythmically, as opposed to just on the page. And I think as well, like you mentioned, you've written a novel too, and we'll chat about that in a minute because that sounds really good. And I also went down the novel writing route at one point, and even still, I found myself thinking about how it sounded rhythmically, kind of the flow of the sentences, even though you don't really typically associate that with novel writing. You just can't get that itch out of you, can you? It has to sound, I don't know, almost melodic as well. It is bizarre. It's got to hit the right beats, and
I'd say so.
Not hit the right notes.
I never hit the right notes. Yeah, totally. That's what language should do. It should sing off the page. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So then our next question, you've got a string of publications under your belt. Looking back, what have you learned from this process? Because I'm not sure how much of the podcast you've listened to, but the whole point of it, each season is focused on a different aspect of creating a project, basically a full writing project. We started with kind of initial idea generation, and then we've gone into editing, getting your work out there, getting published. So how have you found that process in the past?
Interesting. It's a good question. I suppose, so my first major project, like you say, was that show, which then became a collection. And I feel like, I did it at Edinburgh Fringe. And at Edinburgh Fringe, like, you had no idea who was going to be in the audience. And you realise that people are travelling feasibly from anywhere in the world who might not be into poetry, who have stumbled across the show. And it really took you out of your comfort zone, but it also, like, you couldn't make any assumptions about your audience. Like, if I do a poetry night in Leeds, I can be fairly sure that most people are from Leeds, or if not, they live in Leeds. So that means you can use maybe local references, or you can feel comfortable in your accent, or whatever. You know what I mean? You make certain assumptions to some extent. Whereas when it's Edinburgh Fringe, it's like, it could be literally anyone. It could be anyone. And so once I'd finished that show, I suppose it made me really look at my writing more in terms of who it can potentially reach, who might engage with it, how they might perceive certain, because my stuff is like inherently political, or it certainly was then, and it really makes you just realise the weight of what you're saying, and also because once you put it out in the world, right, you've got no control over it. You could pick my book up off a shelf, and I'm not there to explain it or give preamble or contextualise it. It's just there. So that kind of made me think more about how I could layer my writing so that I don't need as much context, but also without it being too obvious. And like, it just makes you think a lot more about how your work's going to be consumed outside of doing a 20-minute set in Leeds, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then my next project after that was A Hurricane in My Head, so that was targeted at 8 to 12-year-olds. So I've gone from writing predominantly political, kind of angry, serious poetry about Brexit and the refugee crisis to suddenly writing poetry for kids in year 5 and year 6. It can't be political. It can't really be angry. It can't have the swears. But also I'm not a kid now, or being a kid now is so different. So it's kind of capturing that essence of childhood. Like it totally stripped away everything I've normally written about, and it made me really think about the audience again in a completely different way. And those two things were worlds apart, but I had to click submit on one manuscript and then start writing the other one. So that was really useful, just in terms of really being aware who my audience is and how I reach that audience and how certain words or images or experiences might connect. And it kind of really stretched me as a writer, which obviously is a great thing. But then I spent 4 years writing the novel. Now writing it kind of started off as a verse novel and then gradually became more traditional prose. But that took me 4 years. And writing a novel obviously is so different to writing a poetry collection. So I feel like that probably more than anything has improved me a lot more as a writer. Just writing, I don't know, more effectively and more subtly and more layers and more nuance and thinking about character and perspective and pacing. So now that I've finished, the novel's kind of out with agents at the moment, and I've moved on to writing my new poetry collection, and I feel like that's kind of on another level, just through forcing myself to write for a different audience, because suddenly writing a novel is a different form. It's potentially a different audience. It has different responsibilities and layers, and like. So I think basically what I'm saying is every time I've written a new project, it has to be something that feels new, that feels like a stretch that I'm having to push myself to do, and I'm having to learn new things as I do it. I can't see writing the same thing twice. I just can't see myself doing that. So that's the only way that I've developed as a writer, really through necessity, to be honest.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And so did you say your novel's not actually out yet? It's still in agents. Right, yeah. Okay. And how's that process kind of, finding agents?
Awful.
Yeah, and but once it's with the agents, it's kind of been out of your control, a little bit out of your hands. It's
horrifying. It's brutal. It's really bad. I don't have an agent yet. It's with agents. I don't have one. So like it's another but it's all a process in it. Yeah. To be honest, right? So I've been a poet for a while, and it's only since like maybe a year ago tops that I've started entering competitions and submitting to poetry journals.
That's really reassuring.
Yeah.
Like that's obviously, as I'm sure you know, that is a very stressful process.
Mm.
And I suppose with the novel, it's harder, to be honest, because I've spent 4 years writing this. That's quite a big chunk out of my career where I've not been writing any poetry, and so it's a big gamble. And obviously, like a whole novel, you feel more like if somebody rejects a poem, I'll just go, okay, whatever, no worries, fine. A novel, it's like, so it's harder. But I'll keep going, and I've got another collection in the process whilst I'm waiting to hopefully hear back from agents. So I'll keep moving.
Yeah.
But I don't end the novelists. That's awful.
Yeah. It just feels like, I think, because I'm waiting for the official diagnosis, but everyone's around me's pretty sure I've got ADHD. I think that's why I like poetry, is you finish it, like I can sit down and write 6 poems on a great day, and I don't know, they'll be varying quality, I'll hold my hands up, but you finish it, whereas I finished the second draft of my book, you're working on your first, and it is just like this interminable time sink of just unrelenting, like, where does this character go? What does this do? How and then you go back and like, I think I've talked this before, but when I was finishing the first draft of my book, it's a fantasy book, and a character pulls out a gun, and there's no guns, but I just couldn't find the word for crossbow, so I just wrote gun because that was the closest, and just carried on and didn't pick it up until like 3 months later. I was like, no, there's no guns in this. So
it's the opposite to it's a lot, but like the process of doing it is like, it's my favorite thing I've ever. Obviously, it's not out yet. It's not a thing, but like the process of writing it is the most I've ever enjoyed writing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's quite. Even if it's like I need to do another draft, well, that's at least 6 months.
Yeah.
And once you finish the draft, you've got to wait at least 2 or 3 months before you go. Do you know what I mean? Because you need that gap in between. So
it's got to like ferment, and like almost you've got to forget it and get to read it again as a reader rather than something you've written. Yeah. No, absolutely. If you're going to do a book again, which you very well like, what's your big lesson from this time? What's the thing that you've learned? Like, if you had to distill this experience down, like just writing it and
the novel.
Yeah, the novel.
That's a really good question. What have I? I suppose. It's a really tough one.
It's all right. It's good.
No, it's good. I guess you underestimate how important. Maybe I'm thinking this because I'm sending it with agents, but I guess you underestimate how important the first 3 or 4 or 5 chapters are. I guess because like in my head, like I know what the whole story is. I'm like, oh, this arc goes here, and this arc does that, and this happens, whatever.
Yeah.
If your first 2 or 3 chapters are interesting, you're not going to get any. So like, I kind of wrote it on the presumption that somebody would read the whole thing and be like, oh, I enjoyed that. Whereas maybe now I'm kind of panicking that the opening is maybe a little bit too subtle, or it doesn't give enough maybe I'm pranging about the opening just because that's what's with it, because they always ask for the first 3 chapters on the first 10,000 words or whatever. So at the moment that's what I'm thinking about, but it is important. But I'd never thought that I'd never considered that before, because I just presumed that if I sent it to somebody, I'd send them the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I guess from a kind of career point of view, like almost just write the first 3 chapters and send that out, and see if someone bites. And if they do, then just you've got a lot of work to do. But that's what I'd say, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I mean, they talked about like that a lot. I did a master's in creative writing, and they said you have got to hook that reader in the first chapter, because if you've lost them by that point, you're not bringing them back. And that really stuck with me as well, actually, because I've always been a bit of a slow starter. I think I take my time to get into the plot, and yeah, you definitely do need to get them pretty instantly. And it's a lot of pressure. That it's a lot to time, because you want to drip feed things. You don't want to deliver everything straight away, but at the same time, you've got to get them hooked, and it's tricky. It's tricky balance.
I know. You don't want to try too hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to feel like you're trying too hard.
Yeah.
Like it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Well,
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, it just feels like the opposite of poetry, because you can have a decent starter, but it's often the end of a poem, I think, is like the big punch, and like it's often like the end of a poem I'll like ruminate on after, like, you know, people I know might not have read. And it has to be a really good beginning for me to remember it. That's because I've got a really short memory. But yeah, the end of a poem, or even better, if the end of a poem comes back to the beginning, it's that like magical coming togetherness. That's the real bit. Yeah. But yeah, it feels like the inverse for a novel. You need that opening to be sort of,
got to be pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Super.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Would you like to ask the next question?
This is actually something I was really interested to pick your brains on, because you've talked a lot about you've taken poetry to the stage, you've produced books for children, and now you're kind of doing quite a lot of outreach work in schools and with communities. So what does the future of poetry look like to you? It's quite a massive question.
Yeah, just super light, Hannah.
So what's the future, Matt?
Oh man, that's good. It is a good question. The future of poetry. I feel like, I feel like poetry. It's a lot of. I feel like poetry is becoming a lot younger. It's something that people are tending to access at a much younger age than you might traditionally expect. And I feel like at the moment, like 5-6 years ago, everything was political, and now it's really, really personal, and it's a lot about. I think it's helping people to understand, like identity politics and like identities. I think it's becoming a lot more useful because there's so much content out there. Like social media is so overwhelming, and there's so much pressure to get likes and to, you know, get views or whatever. I feel like poetry is becoming more and more and more important for young people to try and figure out their identity and kind of find that solace. And so I think the future of poetry, I'm hoping, I feel like it's going to become younger and younger entry point, and it's going to feel a lot more normal, a lot more acceptable, a lot less. I'm not saying that you're going to get kids in playgrounds like sharing poems with each other. I'm not saying that, but I feel like it's becoming more immediately important to young people, and I'm seeing that a lot more in schools as well. That desire to just try and make sense of the world, and unfortunately, like there's a lot of issues in the world right now that are probably going to that are definitely going to affect younger generations more. And I feel like poetry is something that they're already turning to express that and to kind of communicate with older generations as well. So I think the future of poetry looks young and angry and probably under 2 minutes a poem. And I quite like that.
Yeah.
Very good things that I like.
That's a really good answer.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. With your like work, because I mean I'm 27, you are 26?
No, I'm 27.
27?
I wish I was 26. That feels like a long time ago.
But like,
so do I.
I have officially hit the age where, and I imagine you two working in schools will hear, I am out of touch with the kids, trend-wise, and I really don't know what's going on. But who from your experience, who are the writers that you do recommend? Like, obviously yourself is very good, but who do you recommend for young people to read, or are they reading organically? Because I feel like we talk about it a lot that kids aren't reading and sourcing stuff. I was wondering if
they definitely. I mean, in secondary school, you've got like everyone's into Heartstopper, right? But you've got like a lot of verse. So like Matt Goodfellow's written a verse novel about Year 6 called The Final Year, which is really popular. Dean Atter obviously has got The Black Flamingo, which is very popular with secondary school pupils. Stephen Camden, Polar Bear. I've just named 3 men. Sorry. Laura Dockrell's writing for young people is incredible. There's also some really, really great anthologies. I feel like anthologies are great. So like Macmillan produce really good anthologies for young people. So there'll be one about space, or one about cozy poems, or one about myths and legends. And I feel like, because they'll put people like Nikita Gill next to, I don't know, Tennyson, for example, and it's just a real great range and snapshot.
Yeah, amazing.
Like, I feel like a lot of the problem is that so much poetry that's consumed in schools, it's appropriate to show a child. Like, it's appropriate, but it's not written for children.
Yeah.
Like, it's not written with young people and children in mind. And so it's just not going to grab them in the same way. It's just not going to inspire them in the same way, even if it's something that's perfectly inoffensive. Like, it's obviously if it's in a school, but like, it's not written with children in mind. And I think that's the difference, really. But there's so much amazing poetry now on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. There's endless, a lot of content, like I say, being produced by younger people as well, which is really exciting. So I personally never got into it, as I've said, through reading poetry. And I know that books are expensive and libraries are shutting down, which is tragic. But like, poetry exists in so many other places. So get yourself on. There's loads on TikTok. I don't know anything about TikTok, but there is a lot of poetry there, I'm aware.
I wish I knew less about TikTok, I'll be honest. It definitely has given me brain rot. I pretend I work in marketing, so I'm like, yeah, it's for work. It's good to know about. It's not.
It's really, that's the one thing that I've really noticed. Like, when I go into like year 6, I do a lot with year 5 and year 6. And in year 6 in particular, they all, like, whenever I give them an opportunity to use their imagination, they just say things on TikTok. Like, every classroom's like pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, what about you? Tell me something. That's the only thing I've really noticed it in the last 3 or 4 years. Which is anyways, that's another conversation. But there is poetry on there as well.
It's important. Poetry on TikTok is amazing. It's definitely, I've seen loads of talent and I've loved it. But yeah, I think it's definitely like a thing about imagination, about like, I'm one of my New Year's resolutions this year was to watch a TED Talk every day, which has obviously not happened. But I've watched like 50, which is much higher than I thought. And my favourite one was about having to learn to be bored again. Like, we've lost the ability to be bored. We've lost, like, the minute you get bored, you pick up your phone, you turn on your TV, you call someone if or you watch something, you fill that time instantly. And I think that's the thing with like this I think really psychologist or psychiatrist that got the term was just like, you just need to advocate for yourself to be bored like 10 minutes a day. Just literally sit in your room and stare at your ceiling and let your mind go. And I was like, cool, that sounds great, and I've not done it yet. So I'm a hypocrite. But at least I'm aware it's something I should be doing.
That's not an ADHD thing to do.
No.
That's not.
No.
I think I'm somebody who's also in the process of being diagnosed, so I'm not like
fun times. No, it's fine.
Not how we operate, but yeah, I know. But look, when I'm writing, I often go to the pub. I don't get drunk or anything, but I leave my phone at home and take my notepad and sit and write, and it's always way, way, way better. Because even if I'm at home with a notepad, that needs doing. I can check that, I can put that on. Like, no, you've got to really treat yourself up.
I get it at gigs. I'm always at gigs, and I always want to write. And because I'm disabled, I always have a seat. And I'm like, I need to take notebooks with me to gigs, because like they don't care that I'm sat there writing. Like, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still bopping along because I'm a terrible dancer. So I'm not dancing.
Oh, music gigs.
But, music gigs. I'm always like turning through, and I should definitely remember.
I don't think I'll be able to do that. I think I'll be like, I don't know, way too overstimulated to be trying to like control my thoughts at that time. But maybe that's where I'm going wrong. Trying to control my thoughts.
It's a sign of a good gig, though, isn't it? It's a sign of a good, like, if you're watching a poetry gig, you're hearing someone reading, like, that makes me want to write.
Yeah.
Or even if you're watching a film, it's a sign of a good,
get inspiration.
Yeah.
So we're at our penultimate question, aren't we? Do you want to?
We are, yeah. This is another one of yours, but it was a really good one. So I was like, we try and pick the questions together. What advice would you give to someone wanting to get into poetry today?
Want to become a poet?
Yeah, get into the poetry scene. Just to kind of get writing and maybe get known. If they maybe you've managed to make a career out of poetry. So what advice would you give to anyone aspiring to do the same?
Don't allow yourself to spend too long being comfortable. Like, really try and challenge yourself. I know that traveling around to different nights, that's expensive. That's not something that people are able to do, whether it's for access reasons or financial reasons, whatever. But try to read out of your comfort zone, or listen or watch stuff online that's out of your comfort zone. Try to challenge yourself to write in different styles. Just try to, like you'll go through little phases as a poet, right? Where for 6 months you'll write a lot of poems that sound the same. And then 6 months later, you'll start writing differently. And then 6 months later, you start writing differently. And I think that's the most important thing. Don't get comfortable for too long. Because I think some people kind of keep writing the same poem for 2 or 3 years, or only ever perform at one night to the same people who are also performing to each other. And I feel like if you kind of slot into that, then you're not going to challenge yourself and push yourself.
Yeah.
Poetry is constantly evolving, and more people are getting into it, and styles are changing, and there's so many more experience to talk about. I feel like you've really got to throw yourself in and kind of take your time and always be learning. I think one of the things that frustrates me now is when people get into it and they're not interested in learning or developing, they're just interested in sharing what they've written. And obviously we're all excited about what we've written, right? But you've kind of always got to be developing and growing and learning as well. So just be open to that and be patient as well. I'm really guilty of this. When you write something and you've literally just finished writing it, you want to put it online straight away, and you're I want to share it. Don't. I cringe to the depth of my core at some of the things that I've shared online over the years. I really cringe. So try and leave it a few months when you've written something before putting it online. But also, if you are submitting, obviously, once you put it online, you can't submit it to a magazine or competition. So if you're going to go down that road, you need to consider that as well. Take your time and don't ever be comfortable.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. Artistically comfortable. Obviously, sit on a cushion. It's fine. But artistic comfort will stunt any artistic growth, I would say.
That's really good advice. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely my marketing brain's on. Great clip for social media, that. Thanks, man. Going to work really well for us.
Well, final question, and it's a biggie. But you have mentioned some really interesting poets and publications today. But what's your personal kind of favourite book?
It's Swell by Maria Ferguson, which is being published by Penguin on the 30th of January next year.
Good plug. Yeah. I love that. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, that's my favourite book.
That's brilliant.
To be honest, one of my favourite books I've read recently was Jasmine Corey, Inheritance, and Molly Naylor, whatever you've got. I'm really into Bad Betty books at the moment, books that come out on Bad Betty. But I feel like I'm just as inspired by novels, not just because I've written a novel, but Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The characters in it and the music and the setting and the place, I feel like that inspires me just as much as any poetry book. So Queenie as well by Candice Carter-Williams. I love that
great.
Book. Sorry, I've just given you 5. That's a bit of a cheat.
No,
absolutely fine.
It's great. Did you watch the Queenie series? Was it on Sky?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
It's on Channel 4.
Oh,
it's on Channel 4. It's good. Yeah, it's good. It is good.
Okay.
It is good. I think because I think Candice was an exec producer on it. It's kept its.
That's good.
It's true to the. But yeah.
That's the dream as a writer, to be on the ground when if your thing is made into something.
Yeah.
To keep it as authentic as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Super. But Swell by Maria Ferguson is number one, obviously.
Yeah. It's going to be a great book. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm very. Sorry, go on, you're right.
No, I was just about to say, I thought you were done. Do you have anything else to add?
I would say I know that poetry's expensive in terms of buying books, but getting poetry out from the libraries really helps the publisher and the author. You do get money for that as a publisher and author. So get it out from libraries if that's a barrier. And I don't know what. Yeah, I just always challenge yourself to listen to poetry by somebody who's got nothing in common with you. I would say that's the most important thing.
That's really good.
I love that. I think that's definitely something we have at Inksville, which we're really proud of. Is it's quite a diverse room, so we get a lot of different perspectives, which is great. I think to be fair, a lot of the open mics and poetry nights I've been to more recently. Well, not even recently, just over this last few years. Been great for that.
Yeah.
It is getting much better.
But I could never get my poetry from the library because I'm a highlighter, I'm a scroller, I'm a corner bender, if something reminds me of something, I stick it out. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's it.
My poetry books are scrapbooks.
Do you crack the spines?
Oh, I crack the spines. I'm not that person holding it like this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not the same from a screen, is it? But like the Poetry Foundation website has got so much amazing stuff.
It's great. You can print things off even if you're at a school or college. You can do that in libraries. So
yeah. There's tons out there. There's no shortage. YouTube archives. There's all sorts. Yeah.
But poetry is an expensive hobby. We can all agree if you're not careful.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It is possible to do it without much money at all. So, and like I say, if you don't like reading, there's so much you can listen to and so much you can watch, and there's so many. I feel like it's a very flexible art form in terms of how you need to consume it in order for it to be beneficial. So
yeah, definitely.
There's no excuse, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and audiobooks count. I hate people who are like, audiobooks aren't reading. You are still consuming the story.
They absolutely are. They totally are. Absolutely. Yeah.
I really don't get it. But yeah. This has been amazing, Matt. Thank you so much for chatting with us. It's been lovely.
Thanks for having me.
No,
much appreciated.
Thanks for agreeing.
And thank you for all that you're doing for the scene. Putting on workshops and events and festivals and podcasts. It's lovely. Yeah. Like the more people like you as part of the ecosystem, the better it is for everyone.
So. Oh, gosh, thank you so much.
That's really kind. Thank you.
Well, yeah, this has been wonderful. Just thank you so much for joining us today. And should we call it a day there?
Yeah, I hope to catch you soon.
Excellent.
Likewise.
That was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah. We were both just saying, like, what a brilliant guy. Just so easy to talk to, just so down to earth. Absolutely. Yeah, I knew he'd be a great guest.
Just really, passionate. It's really hard to identify being like, oh, this guest is more passionate than others because they've all been insanely passionate. But I think he was the most aligned with how we do our work with Inkspill and what we want the project to represent and engage and challenge the people with, I guess.
Yeah.
It felt much more aligned with what we're doing.
Definitely. And I think I got the same feeling coming away from that conversation that I did when he came in and did his talk at our school.
Nice.
In the sense that poetry feels safe in his hands, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's lovely.
The future of poetry, the fact that he's just really passionate about channeling and kind of connecting with young people and just other people in general, I just feel like, I have faith,
Yeah, absolutely. He just seems lovely.
Yeah, he really does.
People are like, what people do you want over for a dinner party? And I'm like, Matt Abbott would be great. It'd be great fun.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I learned so much from that conversation and just, I never want them to end. Like, we always send a list of questions in advance. And I think I say to you after every interview, I'm like, that should have been longer.
Yeah.
And we totally appreciate people have time constraints and give us their time freely. It's just more I want to talk to them and hear more and learn more from them.
Exactly. There are so many things as well that I want to ask, and I'm just like, no, got to make sure, on a personal level, I just want to know.
Yeah.
But I'm like, got to make sure it's like something that everyone will find interesting rather than just me being a nosy. I'm just so nosy about everything. But yeah, no, just really, really great conversation and some really fab bits of advice coming through in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we both reacted quite strongly to don't get too comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, that leads quite nicely onto the creative tasks for this week, because that's one of the ones that really stuck out to me as well.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking to myself, I do that. And as soon as he said it, I started just reflecting on my existing poetry, and I'm like, I do find that I cling to my comfort topics, my comfort form, and in actual fact, it might be really nice to try something a bit different. Like, I've never tried to write a poem for a child before.
Oh, I mean...
And maybe I should, because
got the inspiration,
I teach kids as well.
Oh,
and
that was different. Sorry.
Oh, my actual child. Yeah. But I mean, actually, a lot of my kids do ask to read my poetry, and they're excited to read my poetry, but I always avoid it because I'm like, no, it's not for you. I don't want you kind of being exposed to content like that at this age. But at the same time, I'm like, well, why am I not writing poetry that's appropriate for them and that's applicable to them? So I really liked what he said there. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to reflect on the poems I've written and see, I know for a fact, just what I've fallen into a comfort trap with almost, and maybe redraft some, maybe write alternative versions of some, by playing with form, structure, content, subject matter. But yeah, I think that'll be
I love that, because your way of reflecting is by exploring. So it's not like a quiet, like meditative kind of like thoughtfulness. It's kind of like an active, like, here's this thing in front of me. I want to change this. I want to challenge myself and grow. And that's really interesting, because I think a lot of people think with this season of the podcast, it's going to be a lot of like reflecting on your work and taking time and maybe go back and editing some stuff, which definitely might come into it. I think that'd be a really interesting element. But I think also there's like a real action of like being reflective is also taking action and doing something with it.
Well, that's what I did with my novel. I mean, that novel has had so many rewrites, and it's still only about, I'd say about halfway done. But every time I got some kind of feedback or criticism on it, I just had to rip it apart and almost start afresh, but from a completely different angle. So even though the novel was still the same in essence, I'd rewrite it in a way that was completely unrecognisable. Characters still the same, personality still the same, storylines the same, but the plot the same, but completely different writing. And I find that really works for me. Rather than being quite like you say meditative, I like to rip things apart and go at it from a completely different angle. Which is why I love my backspace, which you hate.
Oh, stop deleting things, Hannah. How do you know if you delete something good?
Because if it was good, I wouldn't delete it.
Oh, everything, every email I write at work, everything, like anything I write, there is like it's literally called dump, and I will just copy, paste, drop it down.
Yeah.
And it's out the way. And then when I go to send it, I'll just delete it, send it, and then paste it back in and have it immediately. Okay. And you're right, it is probably about 85% guff. Or what was the word you were using for when you were talking about drain stuff?
The sink tap.
I can't remember. We got really stuck on it.
Gludge. I don't know.
But yeah, it's probably 90% that. But the 10% is still useful to have. And also, like, if you write something, you're like, that reads nice, and you go back and you're like, I threw this away last time. This is something that, like, I was at Write Club on Wednesday, and Owen and Vivian were absolutely tearing apart. So they were like, has this line been in your novel before? I was like, absolutely it has. It's a great line. They're like, you can't have that line twice.
So I was like, again.
No. But yeah, if that works for you, I'm excited. Like, that's not really like rude. I don't want you to sound rude. If that's what works for you, like, it's great that you figured out how to motivate yourself.
What about you? What did you take from our conversation with Matt?
Oh, I loved the writing for people, not poets. I think that is so important, and really like crystallized some of the experiences I've had, open mic nights and poetry nights, and in fact just nights where I've read or I've listened to people. There's sometimes I'm like, this room loves this because it's written for this room, and I haven't been able to like hit the net. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with writing poetry for poets. We are feral little nerds that like love a common and interesting place or a fun line break, and that's wonderful. But I think at the end of the day, if we want to make poetry accessible, which is Matt highlighted, is a word that has become like negative in the poetry, which I hate.
It's almost as like, if everyone's reading it, then I don't want to read it, because I'm like, it's, I don't know.
I don't love Rupi Kaur, but I think what Rupi Kaur has done for poetry is like a gateway into it for people is magical. Like, it revolutionized. In fact, The Milk and Honey is 10 years old this year and has been like one of the best-selling poetry books in a while. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not.
I just wish you do more with it. I'm always with Rupi Kaur. I wish there was just more to it. I feel like she could develop it, but then you put it alongside like celebrities who are trying to do what she does, like Abbi, Hannah, and she was in Riverdale, blonde girl. It's called Swimming Lessons, which I thought was a great name, but isn't very good. I can't remember the writer, the celebrity. But you read that and you're like, oh no, what Rupi Kaur's doing has grounding, like it has skill. I just wish they were longer. I just genuinely wish you had more. I just finished On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Apologies if that's not how you pronounce their name. And I loved the lyricism of the book. The book is beautiful to read. As a book, as a narrative story, I feel it fell kind of flat, and I have currently left it unrated on Goodreads and Storygraph, because I can't figure out what to give it, because I enjoyed the poetry of it as a poet, but I'm not sure if I enjoyed the story as a reader.
I had the exact same experience. I've literally just yesterday finished Yellowface.
By F. Kwang.
Is it Kwang? I can't remember.
Rebecca F. Kwang. Sorry. Yeah, because she did Babel under RF and she's just gone to Rebecca.
Yeah, very controversially. Everyone was like telling me, oh, it's amazing, you've got to read it, you're gonna love it, and I was like, wasn't that good?
Interesting. Yeah, it's on my TV. I mean, it's literally there behind us. That's why I can check.
It's funny
because it's funny. I've not read any of her books, and I've just looked. I've got 3 of them. I have Babel, Poppy War, and Yellowface. I've not read any of it yet, so maybe I'll have a little weekend.
I was just disappointed. It was not what I was expecting, and I didn't rate it that much, to be fair. But I think that's it. Yeah, we need to write our poetry with the people in mind. We all fall victim of trying to impress each other and trying to outdo each other.
But not the most beautiful, most lyrical, most intricate thing.
It's not other poets that we need to impress. They're already in the field. They're already in the industry. It's
and I think you're the most critical of other poets. I've read a few collections recently, and I was just like, and they've been big names, and I was just like, oh, okay,
yeah,
fair enough. Whereas someone writes something at Inksville, and I'm like, yes, go for it. This is what I want to read, and it's so exciting. So I think my creative task this week is going to be taking time to reflect and actually like breaking stuff down that I've both read and written and been like, who does this appeal to? Why? What's the story here? Is this accessible? And if not, is that okay? Sometimes you don't have to be accessible. Sometimes being that weird little intricate like word goblin is nice. And sometimes you're like, no, for the story I want to tell here, I need to make this clearer.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna sort of maybe take like 3 poems I've written and 3 poems of other people's, and maybe I'll look at Ruby Core and have a analyse to why she's captured people so much and for so long. To have a 10-year career like she's had off one book it was self-published. Like she's such a mold breaker. I'm weirdly passionate about it. Like in defense of Ruby Core, I think that's energy, but then Stevie Smith was the OG. Anyway. Sorry. Hannah's looking at me like, this is a monologue we don't need. What a great week.
Yes, really what a great episode. Yeah.
If we say so ourselves.
And we're back next week. Do you want to introduce? Well, we've already mentioned our guest for next week, but it is.
Have we?
In the first episode.
Oh shoot! Yeah, sorry, my brain just like stuff. Like, have we done this one? No, I'm so excited. We're talking to Helen Monks, who is the co-director of Lung Theatre, which she's based over in Barnsley. And Alex, my partner, is delighted because she's from Birmingham, and that's where they know each other from. So he's very happy to have another Brummie on the podcast. And she's done some amazing work with communities and with verbatim theatre, and I think she's going to be a hugely interesting person to unpick, sort of reflecting on career and experience.
Yeah, brilliant.
So can't wait to talk to her.
Yeah, me neither. So that's next week. But again, thank you so much, Matt. We had a great time.
We did a great time. We always do.
And so see you next week. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.